The strategy I want to teach you in this video is setting up maps listings using local guides, using a local guides account and setting them up in a location where you don't have an actual business at that location, nor do you have control of the address through some other means like a virtual office or rented office space or something like that. The advantage to this is obvious if you're looking to set up a lot of maps listings for a business, your business or your client's business. The disadvantage is that in this particular technique, you can't claim and verify the listing. So the listing does go live on maps and will show up for searches, but you can't claim and verify it, which is an authority factor. So that's just something to bear in mind. The very first thing you're going to need to do in order to make this technique is to build up a local guides account or many local guides accounts depending on how much you want to do this technique. If you Google local guides, you'll be able to find the local guides program, and it's easy to sign up for a local guides account. This is my local guides account. You can see I'm a level 2 right now. I don't do a lot of work to build this up. You would need to build it up more than this. You want to be a level 2 at the very least, and basically the higher level your local guides account is, the more likely your listing is to get approved. So that's the way to think about it, and it's really a sliding scale. How high your local guide level is, and also how difficult, how spam filled your niche is. Those things are going to have a big impact on how easily listings that you set up are going to get approved. If you are building multiple local guides accounts, meaning you're trying to do this with lots of different listings, and you're going to want to have multiple accounts set up for a couple reasons. The first thing is that you want to keep your black hat work separate from your white hat work, or separate from yourself. So for example, if I'm working in my home office on my work computer, that's going to have a specific IP address, and I'm going to be logging into my own Google account, just my personal Google account, or I might be logging into clients' accounts where I do white hat work for them. And when I'm doing black hat work, I don't want that associated with the same, with basically that same identity. I need to be covering my tracks. So that's one thing, is keeping your black hat work and your white hat or personal work separate. The other thing you want to think about is keeping black hat listings separate from each other. The more of a footprint you have visible when you are setting up your black hat listings, for example, if you set up all your black hat listings from one single local guides account, well, as soon as one of those listings gets flagged as spam or gets taken down or something, it's possible that all the listings that were set up using that specific local guides account could come under scrutiny. We don't know for sure that they would, but the idea of setting up multiple accounts and kind of spreading your black hat work out over multiple accounts and sort of just multiple identities on the web, in terms of different ways that Google may be tracking you. You want to kind of spread that out so that your black hat listings aren't all in danger of getting flagged or taken down when one of them gets flagged or taken down. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that every single listing you set up is going to be under a different account, kind of a different web identity. That would be the absolute safest way to go, but that would also be a lot of work. So you kind of have to decide for yourself. I'm just mentioning that these are kind of the two things you want to keep in mind when you're thinking about covering your tracks. We have lots of videos on covering your tracks and setting up multiple accounts and things like that, and you should check out those videos to make sure that you're up to date on the best way to do that. Once you've got a Google Local Guides account set up and built up, you're ready to start working on actually adding the listing. And the first thing you need to do is choose a convincing fake business address. There are a couple things you want to keep in mind. You want to choose locations when you're looking for business addresses. Choose locations that seem right for your niche. So if you are like an office a business that would be in an office, you want to choose something like an office building. If it's supposed to be sort of like a retail storefront, you might want to choose a strip mall. If it's a service area business that might use a lot of equipment or something, then the location should look like you could drive a big truck in there or store lots of equipment in there. So you want to think about what locations seem right for your niche. And then the other thing is to find addresses that aren't clearly visible from Street View. Not all of the listings you set up in your local guides account will actually be looked at by a person, but you need to assume that they are going to be when you're thinking um, about what addresses you choose. One way to try to find good addresses is to look on Google Maps itself. You can actually just search the area that you want to be looking at, and then you can go to the satellite view and actually look using the satellite and try to figure out, what areas kind of seem like they might uh, contain the types of businesses that my business is or my client's business is, and then start going in and looking at those specific areas and then using Street View to look at how they look online. I want to show you a way I think is easier, and that is to go to loopnet.com. This is the advanced search in loopnet.com, and it allows you to search for buildings, business buildings that are for sale or for lease. And you can search by zip code, and there are lots of different filters. I find this to be a really easy and effective way to find potential addresses. And I'm going to show you, for example, how I might do that. I searched a couple of these and I found that this particular location seemed like a really good one. The way I did that was by searching the address in question in Google Maps, and I see it here, and then I just go right to the Street View. And the Street View that it shows me shows that this particular address it's out here somewhere. If you look at the satellite view, you see that it's sort of a list of of detached or semi-detached buildings, essentially surrounded by a parking lot. And as I move along here and look at this, that's where the businesses are. So it's very difficult to tell what businesses are over there, what are the specific addresses of those businesses. And the way I'm thinking about this is if a person were to look at this business listing I have added, they're trying to decide whether to approve it, and they go to the Street View. I don't want to show them anything through the Street View that would make them think the business is not actually located here. So for example, a strip mall that's quite close to the road and the address numbers are visible above every door where there is a an office, then that's not going to be a good situation. So the first thing you want to think is, does this look like the kind of place where the business in my niche would have a business there? And then the second thing you want to think about is, how visible is it from Street View? Is it easy to tell what the addresses of the businesses are, or are all the businesses really clearly marked by signs so that it's obvious what businesses are in that building? And this is a great example where it's very unclear. Even the sign, if I go over here close to the sign, even the sign is kind of difficult to tell. Office Village, a lot of these just have names. Um, a number of these are medical, team rehabilitation, it says medical center, affiliated eye surgeons. So this would be an example of a great location for some kind of medical listing. You could use some other kind of office that sort of sees clients in their office. That's kind of what this place looks like. It looks sort of like, an office park, but a place where you would probably maybe see customers. Once you've found a location that is to your liking, the next thing you want to try to do is basically find a number that doesn't contain a business that's like a couple numbers up or down from the one that you chose. So I know that the area that was for lease was 1403 through 1435. So I might, for example, look up 1437, I'm going 2 up from uh, the number that I know is an actual address here. And the reason I do that is because normally on a lot of streets, at least in the US, they stay odd or even numbered on different sides of the street. So I'm going to go 2 up from the one that I know was there, and I see that it basically still shows at that location. I kind of see, does maps think this is still the same location? And 1437 works. You also want to make sure that a business does not show up at this specific address when you do the search. You want to do that search in Maps, and you want to do that search um, in Google itself, and just look down to see are there any businesses that are actually at this address. Both of these listings made me afraid that there would be, but they actually look like they're sort of auto-generated pages for that address. It's not actually an address there. It does show that address as being in Crown Office Village, but not a specific business. So I think 1437 would be a decent address to choose. Now you want to get a working phone number with a convincing voicemail. And if you do not have a system for doing this already, I recommend that you use Twilio. Twilio allows you to set up, um, buy new phone numbers, and they're inexpensive to manage those numbers, to take calls, and to forward from those numbers to a voicemail or to some other business. So you have a lot of control of a lot of different numbers very easily, and it's inexpensive. You can also easily remove numbers. For example, if you set up a listing and it doesn't work, it's easy to remove that number from your Twilio account and start on with the next one. The disadvantage of Twilio is that it is very difficult to work with if you are not a Twilio developer. And so I recommend using OpenVBX. This is an open source tool you can install on any website you own, and then you connect it to your Twilio account. So you would still go to Twilio itself, sign up, enter your billing information. Any phone numbers that you purchase, you can still purchase through Twilio. But you set up your Twilio account to start. Then you take OpenVBX and you install it on any website you own. It doesn't matter what website. It just makes sure it's a website that you want to keep because you're going to keep using it. And then you can through the OpenVBX settings, you connect it to your Twilio account, and then it provides you with a really nice, easy point and click interface for managing your Twilio numbers. I think you can even sign up for new numbers, set up new numbers in OpenVBX. Those will get charged to the Twilio account that you have connected to the OpenVBX, but it allows you to do all of that. And then you can record the voicemail. And once you have OpenVBX attached to Twilio, it's very easy to record a voicemail. You can actually just go to that number in OpenVBX and tell it to call a specific number to record a voicemail. You could have it just call your office phone or your cell phone, record the voicemail, and you are going to need to record a convincing voicemail. Remember, we are assuming that that a human is going to be looking at this. They're going to be looking at Street View, and they may call the number. And so you want to set up a voicemail that sounds like the voicemail of an open business. So you want to say, you've reached such and such a business. You might want to say we're located at, give the address, because that's going to be another point to convince someone reviewing that added listing. You might want to give the address, and then you want to say something like, if you're hearing this message, we're either unable to answer the phone or we're on the line with someone else. Please leave a message and we'll call you back. Like something like that. The kind of thing that a business would say if they were open for business, but on the other line or it was taken to voicemail. So you want to make that voicemail very convincing. If you don't feel comfortable recording that voicemail, then you can hire people to read a script for you. So you can outsource that if you need to. The other thing you might want to consider is in your voicemail is saying something about the location itself. Um, just as another point to convince people. An example I might give is if this whole area here is, where this address might be, you could give some specific note like, park in the northeast corner of the parking lot, and you'll see our sign, or something like that, that kind of lets someone who is listening to this voicemail and trying to be convinced, lets them know this is where you're actually located. You could say that you're next to whatever you're next to, or something like that, so that it sounds like you're trying to be helpful to somebody actually looking to find your business, but what you're actually trying to do is convince someone who might be reviewing this added listing that you're actually located at that place. Finally, you want to add the business as a local guide. This is quite easy. I'm signed in to my local guides account. I search the exact business address, and when it comes up, I click Add a Missing Place. I can enter the place name, the category, phone. If you are able to set up a website, I think that will make this more convincing. But if you're kind of doing a churn and burn, you're setting up lots of listings and you're not sure if they're going to work, then you might not want to go through the trouble of adding the website. But you can add as much as you want. So you add whatever information you want to add here, and then you go ahead and click submit. I'm not going to do that now, but you can see it's pretty easy to do. Some final notes I want to make about this process. Um, your local guide's level and the niche you're trying to set the business up in will affect approval. And so it's important to know that you may need a higher level local guides account, or you may just have a lot of difficulty if your niche is one in which a lot of spam listings are set up. You may find that this doesn't work for you. So that's important to know. The other thing to realize is that this is just a changing landscape. Um, Google Maps changes very quickly, and because this is a black hat technique, the specifics of making these kinds of techniques work, especially if you're doing it in bulk, right? If you're trying to set up lots of local guides accounts, you're trying to set up lots of listings, especially then, the specifics of that stuff can change quickly. So I recommend if you have questions about that, if you're trying to do this at a large scale, post in the forum to get specific advice about what you're specifically trying to do, and that way you can make sure you can make this work for you doing it in bulk.